Hello, I'm Heather Shoemaker, and I'm going to demo for you the Language I/O translation app for Zendesk tickets. First, as the customer, I am going to submit a ticket from the Zendesk Spanish portal, so the ticket shows up for the agent. I've already got my question written and ready to send, so I'll go ahead and click enviar or send on the customer portal. It looks like my question was sent, so let's click over to the agent's view and respond. To see it, I'm going to need to reload this view and then navigate back to the most recent tickets, and there we see Fausto's question about Battleground 3. So let's jump into this ticket. As an English-speaking agent, I'm not going to understand Fausto's question in Spanish, but that's okay because when Language I/O is installed, you'll see this little Language I/O button in the visual editor area, and when we click on that, we'll see an activity table provided by Language I/O that gives translate options next to both the incoming subject and question for this customer ticket. Let's just go ahead and translate the body of the ticket so we can see what Fausto is asking. As you can see, the app pushed a translation back in, hello, I want to know, etc. Because there's not enough space in this table, let's go ahead and expand the translation so we can see it in its own window. Hello, I want to know if the new Battleground 3 game is going to include new weapon skins, and if yes, I would like to buy a copy. Thank you, Fausto Baron. So we understand what he's asking now, that's great. If this weren't a great translation, because we always machine translate the incoming customer question, you'll see that there's a retranslate option here. And if we were to click on that, Fausto's original Spanish question would be sent back to the Language I/O server, and the server would either return a new machine translation using a different machine translation engine, or it can also be configured to retrieve a rapid human translation. Either way, the agent is going to understand the question and we are ready to respond. So let's go ahead and answer Fausto's question. Hello, Fausto. Yes, the new Battleground 3 game will include new weapon skins as part of the special paratrooper set. To reserve a copy, just visit this link, as Battleground 3 won't be released until next month. Let me know if I can answer any other questions. Spell this right. Lucia. All right, so we've answered his question in English, and the next step, of course, is to have our English translated into Spanish so Fausto understands. But before we do that, I would just like to point out a few things. Notice that we're using this term weapon skins. In English, we often use the term skin to talk about changing the appearance of something, especially a digital asset. This is a common term in gaming to change the skin of your weapon. In other languages, they don't use the term skin literally to talk about changing the appearance. In fact, it would sound really creepy if it were literally translated. So if we were to just translate this through Google Translate or Bing or some out-of-the-box translation engine, let's see what happens. I've got it already plugged into Google Translate here, and you can see weapon skins translated into Spanish is going to use the literal translation of skin, piel. And if we were to just use that translation, the customer would be really confused and it would sound weird. So what Language I/O does is we are able to load into our system preferred translations for terminology that is unique to a product or to a market vertical. And notice that Fausto used that in his original question. He said, nuevos aspectos de arma, which was translated weapon skins. And aspectos de arma is actually the way that a gaming company would want weapon skins translated into Spanish, but it's not what you're going to get out of the box. When we translate our response, what you'll notice is that Language I/O is going to impose aspectos de arma, the preferred translation, on top of whatever neural machine translation engine that this customer is plugged into. So let's go ahead and request that translation by clicking on the Language I/O button again. You'll see next to current text, we have our English response. And when we click translate next to that, it's going to send our English response to the server, and the server is going to push the translation right back into this visual editor. So now we have the Spanish translation ready to send, and you're also going to see that instead of piel, the literal translation for skin, aspectos de arma was used, which is the preferred translation for this particular term, which is perfect. And we are now ready to go ahead and submit as new this Spanish translation for Fausto. So now let's click back over to Fausto. We will reload this page, and we'll see that Fausto's question has been answered, and he's going to understand it. And before we wrap up this demo, there are a few additional important features that I'd like to show you. First of all, when the agent is responding in English and they're ready to have their response translated into the customer's language, of course they're going to click on the Language I/O button, go to the top of the activity and see current text, which is basically the text that is currently in the visual editor. If we expand and look at our response in this separate Language I/O window, you'll see down here at the bottom right that you've got a toggle between machine and human. Selecting human is going to tell Language I/O that a professional human translation of the agent's response is required. Machine, of course, is going to machine translate the agent's response to the customer. Human can be selected if a high quality response is required, and of course machine when the response needs to be very quick and less expensive. We can also lock this down to one or the other and not expose this toggle to agents if that's what is preferred. Lastly, I'd like to point out that the translations are always available in the ticket. So if you're a manager and you'd like to see what your agent was saying to customers, but you don't speak Spanish either, you'll be able to see Fausto's original Spanish question, the Language I/O translation into English, the agent's English response, and then of course the Spanish translation. And that concludes my demo. Thank you so much for your interest in the Language I/O translation plugin for Zendesk.